Hey guys, welcome to another of my pool plan video. In this video, I'll be covering my thoughts and plans on the upcoming events and banners where Reks and Rem will be the featured synergy unit. One small disclaimer this time around also is that this video was made before the official Square Enix stream for June. And of course, depending on whether there's anything new or exclusive in the GL version of the game, the plans may change based on that. But barring any surprises, here's my thoughts and my plans for the upcoming banners. First things first, quick look on how I did on the previous few weeks where we had Core and Edgar who was featured. Firstly, if you look at the bottom right, there's a banner on Paine there, and the reason I included that banner for this video is that I actually changed my mind on the very last day where Paine's banner was still around. I was really considering pulling for Paine for quite some time, and it was really quite a temptation. And so I guess being human, on her very last day I just decided to gem for her BT. Was actually kind of hoping that I could luck out and get her BT in a few pulls, but as you can see, it really hurt my wallet. Had to spend 80,000 gems just to get her BT, and I think I scored 2 more copies of her FR along the way, so that helped a little bit. But that was a little bit more than I intended to spend for Paine. I did also pull for Core's FR BT because Core and Noctis FR also is one of the characters that I was really looking forward to update in my roster. So I went in hard with tickets, hoping to actually luck out on Core's BT, but luck would have it. In 460 tickets, I actually scored 4 Noctis FR, so I didn't need his FR anymore. And I decided to just cut my losses there and use PT tokens for Core's BT instead. Now Core's BT really isn't needed for his kit. It's one of the few rare situations where he can function without his BT, but I really like Core and I think having his BT is really worth it. But that's really my opinion. And then finally, we recently had the World of Illusion Spiritus Shiva, where of course Edgar makes his return with his FR and BT newly featured. I was hoping to skip pulling for him, but the event is really quite challenging, not gonna lie. And it makes a big difference whether or not you actually have Edgar in your party. I didn't even have Edgar LD coming into this event, so I decided to just spend some tickets chasing after his LD. The lucky thing is that the free multis on Edgar's event gave me 2 free BTs. So what I did is I upgraded his BT but only to 0 out of 3. I didn't green Edgar and I don't really want to waste my BT ingots on him. Unfortunately though, his LD took me 200 tickets, but I did get 1 of his FR along the way, so I maxed out his FR as well. My Edgar is currently sitting at FR LD and a 0 out of 3 BT, and I used him for the Shiva event. All in all, it's a very investment heavy few weeks for me. Spent 85,000 gems, 660 tickets and 50 BT tokens in all. Alright, so coming to the first event in June, which will be Reks Lost Chapters. Reks is Vaan's brother from Final Fantasy XII, and he's been somewhat of a meme character for some time because, and spoiler alert, Reks actually dies at the start of Final Fantasy XII. So you really only play as Reks for, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes to half an hour or so, depending on how fast you can clear the prologue. After which we switch to Vaan as the main protagonist of the game. Anyway, coming to Reks in the DFFOO version of the game, Reks functions primarily as a single target tank character without any off-turn or counter capabilities actually, but he makes up for it by having extremely good on-turn damage, and I'll cover a bit about that more as I go through his kit. Since he's a new character, just a very brief description about all his abilities, and I won't go into too much detail here, otherwise it will take too many slides and take a lot of time. but I hope the following will give you at least a rough idea about how he functions in your party. His S1 is an AoE Brave and HP damage attack, and importantly it grants himself one of his signature buff, which is Damascus Loyal Soldier. This is a stacking buff that can max out at 5 stacks, and normally each time he uses S1 he gains stacks of this buff. This is the buff that grants him a preemptive strike during his turn. It functions similarly to how Core does his preemptive strike. The main difference of course is this preemptive strike only triggers at the start of Reks' turn and nowhere else. When it is at high stacks, I believe more than 3 stacks, this preemptive strike turns into the plus variant, which does even more damage. And it is this preemptive strike that really helps to bolster Reks' on-turn damage. Reks S2 is a single target Brave and HP attack, and this grants the entire party a buff that functions sort of like a cover buff. However, the way Reks covers his allies is very different from typical counter tanks, for example Gladio, Oren or Galuf. Reks doesn't actually jump in front and cover the ally. How this buff works is if any ally that is buffed by his cover buff takes any single target attack, all Brave and HP damage from that attack is redirected to Reks instead. Moving on to EX. Reks' EX is very important because it debuffs all enemies a 6-turn debuff called Vivifying Thunderstorm. I believe that's what the full name is. In essence, this is a Thunder Imperil debuff, but more importantly than that, this debuff also reduces the Brave and HP damage that the enemies will deal, and also has a nice side effect of also increasing the HP damage that the enemies take by 20%. But it is the Brave and HP damage mitigation that is quite important, because this helps to bolster Reks' role and function as a tank. Next up, with his LD, his LD grants himself another of his very important signature buffs, so he really does need his LD to function. His LD also provides the entire party with Thunder Enchant, so the combination of his EX and LD also makes Reks into a Thunder Enchanter and Imperiler, which is very handy to have. Importantly also, this buff carries with it a party-wide Brave and HP damage reduction effect. So in essence, this combos very nicely with the Thunderstorm debuff that his EX does, since both the buff from his LD and the debuff from his EX carries Brave and HP damage mitigation. Essentially, with both of them in play, you'll be taking very little or a fraction of the Brave and HP damage that you would normally otherwise receive. Now coming on to the really juicy part about Reks' kit, which is his BT weapon. And I know there's going to be questions on whether does Reks need his BT to function. Answer is yes, you must have Reks BT if you really plan on having Reks in your main party. Without the BT, his on-turn damage significantly drops, and without the ability to do off-turn damage, it would be quite difficult to justify bringing Reks along versus other cover tanks that you may have. Now, why is Reks BT very important? Beyond the buffs that the BT aura gives, which is pretty standard now amongst all BT auras, but importantly, as long as Reks BT aura is up, it locks his Damascus Loyal Soldier buff at 5 stacks. So he will be doing the plus version of his preemptive strike every time he gets a turn, but more importantly, the BT makes it so that his preemptive strike is done twice at the start of each of his turn. The plus version is 4 HP dumps in total, so this means that before you even select any attack with Reks, he would have done 8 HP dumps of attacks. All his other skills and abilities are about 4 to 5 HP dumps in total. So this means that without launch, Reks will be able to deal 12-13 HP dumps worth of damage every time he gets a turn, which is pretty good for a tank. And like I said at the start, really makes up for the fact that Reks does not have any off-turn damage. Moving to his FR, and it's a very interesting FR. First of all, his FR also grants himself 5 stacks of his Loyal Soldier buff, and it also inflicts the Vivifying Thunderstorm EX debuff on all enemies, which is pretty handy. His FR conditionals I say is interesting because it carries conditionals that cover both on-turn and off-turn. Usually when we have characters that specialize as a tank or off-turn, the FR conditionals also reflect that. And on the other hand, if the party member is a strong on-turn attacker, the FR conditionals usually require you to do on-turn damage. Reks is sort of a mix of half and half. So during your turn, if you do a lightning attack, you get plus 30% to the conditional, which is a given since he's a party lightning enchanter. His second condition requires you to end a turn while having a overhead in play, and this gives you plus 40%. So those two conditionals are on turn, and if you meet both you get plus 70%, which is not the highest but it's pretty decent. The kicker though is that he has a third conditional where if you receive brave damage, which normally requires the enemies to take a turn or to have some sort of HP trigger that attacks you. But if this happens, you get plus 20%. Plus 20% isn't the highest for often FR conditionals, and neither is plus 70%, but the combination of having both makes it so that if you are running a standard party where you're expecting the enemies to take turns, Reks FR conditional should rack up the HP bonus fairly quickly as well. All in all, although Reks's primary role is a tank, he does actually very good on-turn damage, not forgetting that he has access to BT, so you could do something like BT plus and then FR, let a couple turns go by to rack up the force bonus percentage, and then while his BT plus aura is up, go into a BT mode with Reks, where every single turn in BT mode he will trigger his preemptive attack twice, and that is going to lead to a massive BT mode damage. For me personally though, I don't really see a strong need to have another tank in my roster. It is a little bit tempting because not many tanks actually have access to BT and FR, so I have to give Reks credit for that. But at the current rate of the game, I still have quite a lot of tanks. Even in the recent Dare to Defy, I didn't actually use many of the tanks. I think the only tank that I really ended up using is Galuf. Plus, as you've seen, I just had a couple of few weeks where I spent a lot of gems and tickets, so I'm going to take this event as an opportunity to recoup some of my resources. Right after Reks, we have Dimension's End Transcendence Tier 15. This is going to be the second to last Dimension's End Transcendence stage. There are only 16 stages in all. This event will feature Rem with a rework and a new FRBT, as well as a rerun of Vaan's FRBT and a slight rework for Vaan. So coming to Rem's rework first, it isn't really a very massive rework. It covers more on a damage rework across both her EX and LD. But I have to say the rework on the EX is a sight for sore eyes, because prior to this event her EX is actually pretty bad. If I remember correctly, I think her EX only has 2 HP dumps, which in today's standards is extremely lacking, so getting a rework here is really needed for her kit. Her EX also now packs stronger party-wide auras, and she now also starts the battle with her generic attack up buff present. Her LD also receives a damage rework, and upon use of her LD it also replenishes 1 S1 and 1 S2 skill use. Can't remember whether this was already present, but I know for sure that once this event comes, her LD will definitely replenish skill use after use. Rem will receive a new BT aura, and it's a very nice BT. It's relatively short in duration, lasts only for 6 turns. However, it does have a very cool effect where your entire party cannot die while the BT aura is up. even if everyone's HP is at 0. Don't forget that PT auras cannot be dispelled by the enemy, so meaning that with this PT aura up, you cannot die even if, say for example, Lufenia Orb triggers or expires, or if the attack does a buff wipe and instant kill attack on you, you will still survive. It carries the usual BT aura, so HP damage plus 20%, increased caps to Brave and HP. Brave gains a massive plus 50%, and that's pretty good. It also has another special effect where anytime you overheal the party, any excess healing gets directly converted to Brave Battery, which is very good because Rem does have an instant turn healing ability in the form of Cure, which is her S1. Lastly, when her BT aura expires, it will automatically heal the entire party to 100% HP. What this means is that if you're expecting a deadly attack to come, you could potentially go into Rem's BT, and near the end of the fight, just let the BT aura expire and it will automatically top up your health so that you can meet the HP mission requirement for the stage. Finally, as if that's really not enough, her BT aura also allows your entire party to get an instantly filled EX meter every time after Rem takes her turn. I think this goes very nicely with Rem's kit because part of Rem's unique part of her kit is that she has the ability to swap turns. So in theory, what happens here is that if you use Rem to swap a turn with another ally, not only will the ally get a turn immediately after Rem, the ally will also start the turn with a full EX meter guaranteed. I would say that if you really want to use Rem, you should really aim for her BT. It comes pretty loaded overall. Moving to Rem's FR. Rem's FR will battery the entire party of 100% of Rem's max brave value, and her FR is one of the popular FRs. That's because her FR also functions as a swap turn skill, meaning that when you select her FR attack, you'll be prompted to select an ally in your list, and upon using her force attack, Rem will swap turns, or will turn manipulate I should say, the ally's turn to move immediately after her. This works even as force echoes, of course, so essentially what this means is that you could use Rem as an echoes character and use her to also line up the turn order so that you get the best use out of your force time. Turn manipulation and turn order may not sound like a big thing, but trust me when I say this, it can be pretty huge depending on the party setup, especially as you are near the end of your force time, and you want to get a few big hits in before your force time expires. Rem's FR echoes really helps you to line up to achieve that effect. If you don't want to swap turns, you can actually select herself when you use her FR, and if you do that, her FR becomes instead an instant turn attack. This makes her FR a very versatile FR to use, not to mention that of course Rem herself is already a very versatile character. She has two conditionals to her FR. The first is if you recover Brave to allies during your turn, you get plus 20%, and you get an additional plus 20% for a total of 40% if it is Rem who recovers Brave to allies. This is also another reason why her BT is very important, because her BT allows overheals to battery the party. This allows other characters with burst healing capabilities to also be able to hit the first conditional. The second conditional is pretty good because it doesn't require you to attack, it just requires you to have at least 30% or more of your max brave at the end of your turn, and this gives a massive 40% bonus. This works particularly well with supercharging skills that also increase your force bonus percentage. I guess popular ones would be Penelo's S1 or S2 or Ares Echoes, because those would hit both these conditionals to give you another plus 60% on top of whatever other bonus they would normally give. This means that Rem's FR is also somewhat decent as a main FR. But you know, if you have some other characters who you really want to use as the main FR, you could also of course just use Rem's FR as an echoes, and it will still serve you fairly well, making her truly a versatile character in your roster. Just covering a little bit about Vaan, because his FR is featured and there is a secondary banner with him. During his rework, his LD now gets the so-called true damage effect, similar to characters like Leo or Tifa, and his BT aura gets boosted where the Brave floor is now 50% of your max Brave, and his BT aura gives you another HP damage cap plus 30%. Vaan's Force also receives a rework on the bonus tied to the conditionals, where it's upped a little bit to be more in line with the current meta. I won't cover those, but I've included that on the bottom right of the slide for reference. I'm not really interested in Vaan, to be honest, because his main gimmick is really as a damage dealer, and nowadays many damage dealers also come with additional utility or some sort of utility, but Vaan is really more focusing on the damage. He does, I guess, have the ability to land a blind debuff, and he also provides immunity to breaks through his Brave floor. But other than that, you know, if you're bringing Vaan, you're bringing him for damage, and I'm very comfortable with the rest of my damage dealers, so Vaan is not a character that I'm aiming for, but Rem I am extremely interested in. Now, whether I use tickets or gems depends on how I do on the free pool. If I manage to luck out and get her BT on the free multi, then I'll just go straight in with tickets to get her FR. But if I don't get her BT for free, then I'll just go straight for gems, just in case, you know, I need to PT her BT. Otherwise, there's no telling, you know, how many tickets I need to spend until her BT finally drops, and I really don't want to, you know, go into like 1000+ tickets. Alright, on this part of the video, I'll be giving my opinion on who you can potentially aim for if you are limited in resources, whether be it your gems, tickets, or BT ingots or high armor ingots. Overall, across these two banners, I really like Rem. I think she fits in fairly well in the Force Echoes era, because her Force Echo, Force Attack is a very good one, and she packs a pretty loaded BT weapon as well. Versatility also has a lot of value nowadays, considering in GL we also have access to lockout events, and in these sort of events I think Rem would be a very high value character, because you can really slot her in virtually any party you have, and regardless of, you know, who you pair her with, she will still do extremely well. As for Reks and Garnet, Garnet is featured on Rex's event as well, and Garnet actually doesn't get a rework, but she does get, of course, a rerun of her FR and BT. First off, I think starting with Garnet, she's still a very capable support character. Her BT aura is very powerful. She does have the often attacks that triggers once every 4 turns, and she also, of course, have access to Force Echoes as well. So, you know, nothing wrong getting Garnet here. I wouldn't really recommend, you know, gunning for her if you don't have her, because nowadays we have a lot of other great support characters. As for Reks, I think he fits more into the role fulfillment category, whereby, you know, if you are fairly new and you don't have a lot of tanks in your roster, then I think his value jumps considerably higher. In DFFOO, tanks are generally extremely good characters to have in your roster. But if you are like me and you have other tanks already fully built and you feel you can make do without one, then, you know, you don't really need Reks. Sure, he does nice damage, but not forgetting you must build his entire kit, which includes giving him a green BT for him to achieve that nice damage. We recently had quite a lot of characters who can also deal nice damage. Most recent ones will of course be Core and Noctis, and coming up we will soon have other nice characters who will also do nice damage overall. So, you know, I would say that if you want to pull for Reks, you should be pulling for him based more on his tanking capabilities rather than the ability to deal nice damage. Finally, notice that Vaan isn't even on this slide. He does actually do pretty nice damage as well, but honestly, I think that really isn't enough to justify pulling for a character in the current meta. So I think if you really have very limited resources, these are the 3 characters that I would recommend for you to consider rather than Vaan. So that's it for this video. In summary, I'll be skipping Reks and Garnet. I will be using either tickets or gems for Rem depending on how I do on the free pulls. But I will be aiming to get all of Rem's gear, which is her FR and her BT. And I will be skipping Vaan because I don't really have a lot of interest in Vaan. If you enjoy the content, do leave a like, comment or subscribe. It really helps a lot. Till then, good luck in your next few pulls. See ya!